Hello, everybody. I'm Nikema Williams, and I proudly represent Georgia's 5th Congressional District. And I'm sure that all of you know by now that President Biden signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And some of you might call it the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. As a member of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, this law became very close and dear to me. Georgia is on track to receive $12.3 billion. That's billion with a B, y'all. Y'all, that's money that will create jobs across our state, reconnect neighborhoods that were intentionally divided by highways, neighborhoods like Sweet Auburn and the Summer Hill communities, repair our crumbling bridges, and expand service for MARTA and broadband. And y'all, that's just the beginning. I always think about legislation in terms of how it benefits people. And that's why I'm having events with community leaders across the 5th District to share how this once in a generation investment will benefit people right here in the district. So for today's event, I'm joined by Richard Rose, president of the Atlanta branch of the NAACP. President Rose is going to talk about how the infrastructure bill will benefit Atlanta's Black communities. President Rose, how are you today?
I'm great. Good morning to you. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Thank you so much for everything that you continue to do for our communities. And thank you for being here with us this morning. So I read your op-ed in the Atlanta Daily World about infrastructure. And one of the lines that really stood out to me, you wrote, "This is the most significant federal effort ever conceived to build the infrastructure for a much more just future in Georgia and across the country. Using infrastructure as a tool for racial justice and undoing the mistakes of previous generations has been a key priority of mine." Can you talk just a little bit more about some of the historical injustices that we've seen here in Atlanta?
So sure, you can just look at the current interstate system, how it snakes around Atlanta, curves, and then curves back again. We know that it was an attempt to divide communities, particularly in-town neighborhoods. I-20 west of I-75, 85 corridor in particular, not only went through Black neighborhoods, but it also divided what was once white neighborhoods from Black neighborhoods. They were sort of a walls between to continue to divide us, and has taken out some important Black neighborhoods. So now we have an opportunity to correct some of these things by investing more in Black communities and Black and brown neighborhoods to kind of overcome those barriers that were constructed then.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that bill that, a little old freshman member of Congress, Congresswoman Nikema Williams, had an idea in the early spring about, and I partnered with some other organizations around reconnecting communities and neighborhoods. And we were able to get this legislation included in the bipartisan infrastructure bill to restore neighborhoods, because as you said, you can look at I-20 and the downtown connector and see the impact that the 1956 Federal Highway Act had on our Black communities, decimating Black wealth, dividing Black neighborhoods. And this was done intentionally. And it wasn't just here in Atlanta, it was across the country. So these are some things where we look at, if the president and his administration is true about building back better, then we needed them to step up and show us that they meant it. And that's exactly what this bill does, because it's about equity. How do we address the harms of our past and move forward in a way that addresses those harms, but also builds up the next generation. So I'm excited about this conversation today because I know that a lot of work was put into this. We still have a lot more to do, but we can't overlook that the work that was done to provide equity through transportation and infrastructure with this bill. And also, I'm just wondering, I know what the answer is probably going to be, but do you think the infrastructure bill goes far enough to meet the infrastructure needs that we have in the 5th District?
Of course, I do not think so, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Any step toward equity versus equality is a step in the right direction. Implementation will be key. And so we have to depend, obviously, on the Biden administration to do that. But I have every confidence that with the right people in place, and I think those appointments are still going on now, that we can have the implementation that affects those people who are most in need, those neighborhoods who are most in need, those neighborhoods who have been disaffected for so long. I'm looking forward to working with whomever for the benefit of the community.
So you're absolutely right, President Rose. This was just the first step, a big historic step, an investment in the right direction. And y'all, we still have work to do. We have to make sure that we stay engaged, we stay involved, because the work that happens here is what we allow. And we have to continue to make our needs known and make sure that our leaders are being responsive to us. And that's exactly what we've done with this bipartisan infrastructure bill. So thank you, President Rhodes, for joining me today for part 1 of this virtual event. And so everyone stay tuned for part 2. You'll be able to find both parts on my social media accounts, Rep. Nikema Williams on Facebook and Rep. Nikema on Twitter and Instagram. And the NAACP of Atlanta will also be sharing this conversation. So thank you, President Rhodes, again for part 1, and y'all stay tuned for part 2.
You are most welcome. Always great to be with you and have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.